This is a Union hospital, and this man is a Confederate?
Blood is not gray or blue. It's all one color.
If we are not loyal to the Confederacy, then we are traitors.
You want my friendship, don't you?
I see what you do.
These men could help turn the war in our favor.
You're not traffic with extremists.
I promise to help you. We are all in this together. Let's not make enemies of each other.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey,
Josh, thanks so much for being here.
thanks for having me.
Congratulations on this event. It's a sort of PBS event, right? It's the first time they've done sort of their own original programming, not sort of co-sponsoring with the BBC or anything in like, what, 12, 15 years?
I think a decade or so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that indie song appears in the show, but it's great in the preview.
The whole thing is just scored by My Morning Jacket.
Yeah, exactly.
I was surprised. It's sort of like a Baz Luhrmann take on the Civil War.
Yeah.
How did you get involved with this project? It's a far departure from what you had been doing with How I Met Your Mother. Obviously, I would imagine you were sort of looking for something like that, something that was a...
I don't know that I was looking to play a morphine-addicted Civil War surgeon, but when it came along, I thought, well, this feels different. I did 9 seasons, 208 episodes of another television show, and after you do something like that, you both as an actor and also just to remember that you can play other roles. And this role, it was so well written. The people involved were so classy, and I felt like it scared me a lot. Just can I do this? And so I'm so glad I said yes.
So that's actually something that you sort of start looking for after 9 years of doing a television show. Does this scare me? Does this sort of...
I think it's a good question to ask yourself, because your natural impulse is to settle into things you know you can do, or that you've been reinforced, had positive reinforcement around. But to me, just as a creative person, I feel like leaning into that place that feels uncomfortable is really where you kind of find out what you're made of and what you're capable of. And all the big great things in my life have come from jumping into the deep end of and just scaring myself a little bit.
When you are scaring yourself, when you're getting on a set like this, how are you as an actor? How are you responding to your own performance? How much do you find that you can sort of remain energetic rather than slightly insecure, because this is something different than you've ever
Well,
done?
it was interesting the way they did the schedule was the first 3 days we did what's called crossboarding. I think it's called crossboarding, where we would shoot all 3 episodes at once, the first 3, and then the next 3 all at once with 2 different directors. So my first 3 days of shooting were from the 3rd episode, which is a huge episode for me, where I had to kind of spoiler, I had to amputate my brother's leg, which was high drama, and I was terrified as an actor because I hadn't really played the part yet, and it was this big episode for me. But it was kind of a stroke of good fortune in terms of scheduling, because as the actor was terrified, and my character was supposed to be kind of terrified. So when I watched the episode, I thought, well, that looks like a guy who's kind of terrified. So it worked out.
I'd be kind of curious, as an actor for you, as for any actor, do you find it's more difficult to play terrified and dramatic than it is to kind of play a character that's sort of living in the normal and in the moment?
Not quite. In some ways, I think...
'Cause dramatically, being terrified and scared, you can kind of just start doing big things. You don't want them to seem fake. But...
Well, also it was actually very hot there, but they also kind of mist up your face because I'm doing this surgery, and
there was no AC during the Civil War time.
Well, they would turn it off when we shot, at least. Yeah, it makes noise. But sometimes it's actually really hard to play like just a normal guy.
Yeah.
And I sometimes I'll see performances that I'll think, I know how hard that was for them to do, but it's not the performance that kind of gets a lot of attention because it's not so flashy. I remember when Christian Bale won the Oscar for The Fighter, he thanked Mark Wahlberg because he said, I know that a performance like mine can't exist without a straight man, essentially, but like that centered performance. So he thanked him for that, which I thought was really touching. And he said, I've been that for other people. And I always saw that my role in How I Met Your Mother in some ways was to be the strong, steady center, so all the craziness could go around me, even though that character got to be crazy just like a lot also. So, yeah.
But I would imagine, even if you're not the sort of strong center or the straight man, for lack of a better word, it might be I would imagine it's more difficult to inhabit a character in just sort of your regular scenes rather than these sort of big, like you said, flashy, dramatic moments, which it seems like you could rely on more tools for as an actor.
I think so, and there's also, you have to resist that part of you that does want to chew the scenery, and you
If
know.
I was an actor, I would choose scenery all the time.
Yeah,
I'd always be
you've got to
going
resist
for
it. I mean, I had some, detoxing off morphine scenes, which you have to watch that tendency to, try to win awards, and just really play it truthfully and find out where it lives, and it's always a negotiation of both wanting to be truthful and also knowing that you are giving a performance and you are serving a larger story. So it's kind of like being so lost and in it, but also knowing that there's tape on the floor that you have to step on that mark. It's a really interesting kind of split focus. A
morphine detox scene, is that a scene that when you're working with the director, do you like, okay, I'm going to start up here, you just take me down to where we want to be?
Kind of, it was Mary Elizabeth Winstead and I had these really great snes.
She's great in the show,
She's
too.
terrific and just a great gal. But you rehearse it and then they either pull you back or not. We just did a lot of those scenes. We would just run through them, especially one of them, the camera was just following us. It wasn't even like her coverage or my coverage. The camera would just kind of move around because the scene was, kind of chaotic. But you kind of do your own inner modulation. Like you try it, you say, oh, that was too big, that was too small, I'm gonna try it again. Can we have another? Sometimes you'll ask for another, because we were moving super fast. So sometimes you'd have to say, I think we can get another one that might be better.
So talk to me about your character. I feel like we've launched into how you're doing the character, and we haven't told anybody about who your character is.
Sorry, guys.
It's on me. I've seen it. So
I just realized there's people out there. My character. It was like one single awkward laugh.
It was mine.
My character's Dr. Foster. He's a Union civilian surgeon. This is at the start of the Civil War, this first couple months of Civil War in 1862. They're in Alexandria, Virginia, which has just been taken over by the Union Army. So it's a Confederate-occupied town by the Union Army, and they've booted this, they haven't kicked them out, but there's a genteel Southern family who owns this fancy hotel called the Mansion House, and they have taken it over and turned it into a hospital. And my character is one of the surgeons, and he's interesting because he's a Union loyalist, but he's not an abolitionist. He's very complicated, and
well, his loyalties to the Union is more to keep the country together rather than any kind of
but
secession.
he's not. He grew up in Maryland, which was a border state, so he grew up on a plantation with 64 slaves, and Mary's character, Mary, is a fierce abolitionist. So there's a lot of tension between them in the first couple episodes around that. But he's also he's a great lover of medicine. He loves being a doctor. It really is his passion. But one thing I learned, it's not at that time. It wasn't like it is today. Like, oh, you're a doctor. Like, it was actually kind of a low class profession in a weird way. Because I mean, the bar of entry was very low. You'd like follow your friend, the country doctor, around, and after a few months, he'd be like, "You're a doctor. Congratulations." But
cut it off. I don't know.
Yeah, but he actually, my character had studied in Europe with the people who were on the leading edge of the medical technology. So he brought back the syringe and the morphine, which complicates his life. But he was on the front lines of pain management. It was a really interesting time of transition in terms of what they knew, what they didn't know. What they could have known, if they'd only waited 10 years, they would have known more about bacteria and germs and all this stuff. Something like 3/4 of Civil War deaths were not battlefield deaths; they were infection and disease deaths. So there was just stuff they didn't know. But my character is just more forward-thinking than some of the others.
There's a great moment in the, I believe it's in the first episode, which aired Sunday night, which is when you essentially inject morphine into a soldier and say, it's totally harmless.
Yeah.
It's like a harmless miracle drug that'll cure his pain.
That's what we always think when we play God.
So, you finish How I Met Your Mother, and then, I would imagine you're looking for something different, as you said. What kind of stuff was being offered to you?
Well, I kind of had a thing where I would, if anything, kind of smelled like How I Met Your Mother. I didn't want to play a lot of single guys in New York City looking for love. Like, that was just like a no. I actually spent my first year in the theater. I did a Richard Greenberg play right when I got out of that first summer, and then I was on Broadway in a play called Disgraced last year for about 7 months, and it just felt like the best place for me to go and recharge and remind myself where I came from. Like I before I got on television, I always felt, and still on some level feel the most comfortable as an actor in the theater, and a lot of theater actors will say that. I mean, it's like. It feels like that's where it's just kind of my natural habitat as an actor. I just understand it in some elemental way.
In many ways, I always found that the sitcom kind of uses theater actors very, very well. I mean, a lot of times it's not theater actors who are on sitcoms, but whenever you get a sort of a good theater actor on whether it's a multicam comedy or even like a sort of television drama, there's a certain amount of ability that theater actors have, I think, a lot of times that other actors don't, which is to sort of go and sort of recreate the same thing over and over again for several takes and do it quickly and know exactly how to get there and get away because you're moving kind of fast.
Right. And the multicam shows generally have an audience, which makes it even more kind of theatrical. You have this one night where you do the taping. But How I Met Your Mother, we never had an audience once. We always did just 3 days of shooting, and the crew was our audience, for the whole time. Yeah. But I do think that's true about that. And I like I said earlier, I was just looking for something different. Certain things came along that just didn't feel like the right next move. And because I write and direct, I don't mind in some ways not working for a while as an actor because I wake up and I have something to do throughout the day. I really try to be diligent about writing. So I was really just kind of trying to be a little picky, and trying not to panic and say like the right thing will come along. And I think this was the right next move for me.
Yeah, this is incredible. I don't think anybody was expecting this from you. And you were nervous going in to play this character?
Yeah, I was both nervous and excited. I think any new job, I always say like one of the great things about being an actor is you have to be kind of socially limber. Like some people will work the same job for years and years and years, and whereas an actor, if you go from job to job, you're always having to meet new people, and you're always having to approximate intimacy, even in a scene that with people you don't maybe know, but maybe your characters knew each other. It's a strange gig, actually, being an actor. But I like that aspect of it. But it requires you to be a little more courageous, just interpersonally and also artistically. You have to. You're just throwing yourself into new things all the time, new parts, new challenge, and like I said, you're doing like 8 things at once, and just to bring life to a guy who obviously had a whole life, and that you found out you got the part 3 days before you have to be in Virginia, and then you're plunging yourself into research. You found out that you got the part how? I think I found out on like a Friday, and then I had to be in Virginia on Tuesday, and that was how it worked for almost the whole cast. Yeah. Yeah, the whole thing came together really fast.
So there was a lot of people pretty nervous on
I think so. I mean, that's one of the things where it's always a sweet moment when you're with actors and you feel terrified and you feel like you're the one who's the fraud and shouldn't have been cast, and you're going to be they're going to have to shut down production because you blew it. And then you say to someone like your new friend, you're like, "I'm a little scared. Are you scared?" And they're like, "Yeah, I'm so scared. Thank you for saying that." So it's always a nice bonding moment.
You're just terrified of that moment when you're doing a scene and the director goes, "Cut. Can I talk to you guys for a couple minutes?"
What was that?
Yeah. You're like, wait, where are you guys going? What
yeah, our directors, thankfully, were pretty kind in that regard.
Is it a certain kind of, you mentioned that the life of an actor, it's different social circles and you're sort of courageous in many different ways. Is there a certain sort of double-edged sword that comes with doing a show for 9 years where you have the comfort and security of a job which an actor definitely always wants in many ways, but you don't necessarily have the time to be doing that thing that I think an actor also thinks they should be doing, which is going into these different social circles, taking different jobs, and doing those courageous things that you just spoke of?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, especially about doing a very long-running show, certain guest stars would come in and be incredibly nervous, and by the 7th, 8th, and 9th season, whatever the opposite of nervous, I mean, you couldn't be more relaxed being there because it just feels like you're home after a while, and people are like walking into your home, and you're like, "Welcome, grab some chips, sit on the couch," But I had to. There's on some level that can serve you that comfort. I mean, I think the 5 of us had a real ease together that was born of that comfort. But at the same time, you like I said, you have to find ways to scare yourself. That's why our director Pam Fryman told me in season 1, she's like, "You're not going to get everything you need creatively from this show. You're gonna have to do other things. And that's why I started writing and directing, which also terrified me. And you just have to kind of dare yourself to go out of your comfort zone.
So you wrote and directed 2 independent films, Happy Thank You More Please, and Liberal Arts.
Yeah.
Are you writing films right now? Are you working to sort of direct another indie film? The market, many say, is even more different now than it was in 2012 when you made your last film. I would imagine that's the most terrifying thing right now in regards to that.
Well, the film business is a very strange thing. I mean, I had these windows. I had like 4-month windows where I would say, okay, I have to make the film in these windows, and if I don't make it here, I have a whole another 8 months I have to wait, or a year actually. So there was a kind of urgency around those movies. I have one movie written and ready to go, but it's like an overseas thing. So I'm kind of trying to line up financing for that, and then I have another project that I rewrote, which is a bigger canvas kind of project.
Wow.
That I can't quite talk about the specifics, but it's all very exciting. And I have 60 pages written of this script, 35 pages written of another. So I'm constantly scattering seeds, and whatever one kind of starts to bloom, I'll follow that.
Right. So even like the 60-page one or the 30-page one that you have written, you're probably sort of pitching those as well.
Not quite. I mean, I don't pitch. I mean, I write on spec, and I'll say, because I don't know what I'm pitching. I have to know, like, I have a script, it's ready to go. Here's what it is. I want people to see it. But this other, sometimes I'll put something down, like this one that I wrote. I wrote a movie that's set in Eastern Europe, and I wrote, I think 20 or 25 pages, put it down for 2 years, and then something unlocked for me, and I wrote it, the rest of it, in like a month or two. Like, sometimes things are just ready to go, and other times they need a little more of a gestation process.
Well, yeah, you hit those speed bumps, or it's not even a speed bump sometimes. Sometimes it's just a block, and it's really hard to get around. Screenplay writing is, I mean, writing in general, but narrative is so difficult. Sometimes just getting someone from one place to the next. Yeah,
and you learn a lot about making movies when you edit a movie. Like my editor always said, it's kind of a truism in the film industry, but like if the third act feels off, it's probably a first act problem. Like you have to trace your steps back and figure out like why you went A, B, C, D, how did you get there? And for me, it can get a little, you can overthink it where you don't want to take a wrong move because you don't want to go down the wrong tunnel, because then you're going to have to trace your way back.
I feel like editing, you also learn a lot about momentum and what propels a story forward. Because when you're writing, you think, I need this, we need to explain
everything.
This.
You think you need everything.
And then you get in the editing room and you're like, boring, cut.
Like I think I cut 40 to 45 minutes of shot and edited material from both my movies. So the first assembly was always 2 hours and 20 minutes, 2:25 or something. And then the movies are like, hour 35, hour 40.
When you were making your first movie and you saw the first rough cut that was 2 hours and 20 minutes long, what happened in your head? What happened in your heart?
Well, I was like, I don't think this is a 2 hour, 20-minute movie. Like we gotta find some way to shave this down. But I'm a little more ruthless with myself than I thought I would be, because when you're a writer, you're so precious. I mean, I worked on scenes that I just thought were such a big deal. I thought I cut a scene that I thought was kind of the centerpiece thematically of the first movie, and just you got to see the forest for the trees. Like sometimes you'll just go along and it will feel like, why does the movie drop here? It feels like it drops in energy, and then you remove the scene and you watch it without that scene, and you're like, wow, this really opened it up.
Especially for something that's a centerpiece thematically, because a lot of times your film itself is thematically correct.
Yeah, and you're saying things that you don't need to say. You also get great actors. I remember when I was working with Richard Jenkins on Liberal Arts, he would say, can I not say this line? I think I can say this with my eyes. And sure enough, he does, and it's 800 times better without the line. Yeah. And in editing Liberal Arts, I cut a whole storyline that was like, the character had a friend back in New York, and I thought I needed to show that. But there was something about the movie came to life once he got onto the campus where he went to college. So it was just our directive in the editing room was like, get him to campus as fast as he can, and when he goes back to New York, get him back to campus as fast as he can. So I had to lose this storyline, which it kind of broke my heart in the moment, but it was absolutely the right thing, because, and I was worried because I didn't want him to seem so like without friends, but it worked so much better to have him be this guy in New York who didn't have much of a life. He didn't have such much of a social, fabric to his life, and it just worked better.
Do you take any of these tools with you when you go into a show like Mercy, or do you kind of, I'm just going to let their writing go with it, and I'm going to get on set and hit my mark and do the best job that I can as this actor? Or do you ever find yourself saying, like, I can say this with my eyes?
Well, yeah. I thought you were asking if I take my filmmaker thought into. Is that what you mean? Like, do I take my?
I meant more. I guess sort of Richard Jenkins as the actor on your set is because sometimes it's a movie. I feel like they're a little more lax of an environment for actors, especially with a director like you. Maybe you're letting him do something that a show that has to move.
Well, he's a real good actor, so I'll let him do. I'm not going to hold his hand through everything. But it's good to trust the people you're with. I mean, this is Scott Free, Ridley Scott's company produced this. They were the cast they assembled was fantastic. The scripts were incredible. I just felt like, okay, they know what they're doing. And then when I saw the first couple episodes, it was such a relief because you feel sometimes you'll make something and you'll be like, that's not what I thought we were making. And then with this, I was like, oh, this is what I hoped we were making. This is what the show felt like, but it's the best version of it. And I could see that they were really smart. Like they're picking the best takes. They're picking, they're constructing it in such a way that it has this velocity to it. And I at that point, once you realize you're in good hands, you can relax a little bit more and just do your job.
What happens when you say, that's not what I thought we were making? And you go, oh, sorry.
That hasn't happened to me in a while. But sometimes, I remember Allison Janney, who was in liberal arts, she had said it was really hard for her to watch The West Wing. And she won 800 Emmys for it. But every year she won. But she would say, no, they don't pick my best takes. Like she would remember what she had done, and she would see that they didn't pick the one she thought was the best. And I can't even imagine what those takes must have been. Yeah. But it's hard. It's hard to watch yourself, and it's hard to, especially when you've been on the other side of the camera, to give over that control. But I'm pretty good about compartmentalizing. When I'm an actor, I can just be an actor, and when I'm doing the other thing, I do the other thing.
Right on. I think we have some time for audience questions. Anyone have any questions out there? Right there.
Oh. Hey, Josh. My name's Matt.
Hey, man.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask what it was like working with Ridley Scott on the show.
We didn't. His company produced it. We had a little drink with him afterwards, but he wasn't around. He didn't direct the episodes. Roxanne Dawson directed the first 3, and Jeremy Webb directed the next 3. But he was, his company, Scott Free, which is run by this terrific guy, David Zucker, who, I think Ridley Scott was like, he was reading scripts. He was watching cuts and giving notes. But the one time I met him, he seemed lovely. Yeah.
I met him. He was on the stage. Very nice guy.
Hey,
bragging, sorry. Go ahead.
How's it going?
Hey, man.
I was wondering if you could go into a little bit about the medical research you had to do to prepare for your role.
Yeah, cool. We have 3 hours, right, just to sit and talk about medical stuff. Well, I was plunged in really fast to it all. There was a really terrific book called Learning from the Wounded, or Lessons from the. I think it was called Learning from the Wounded, that I got pretty deep into. I also had to research morphine addiction because my character goes down a dark path with that. And
is it different than heroin addiction?
Interestingly, I mean, it's opiates, right? But interestingly, I learned that they use methadone to get people off heroin, and to get people off of morphine. In the 19th century, they used heroin. So heroin was the methadone of its time. None of this has worked out great. But we also had a medical expert, Stanley Burns, who's the medical consultant on the NIC, and he's got this whole archive of photographs, and he taught me and McKinley Belcher, who plays Samuel Diggs, how to suture a wound and tie the ligature. And Mary and I went to this place called I think it was the Chimborazo Medical Museum in Richmond, and they showed step by step, how they would do an amputation. And I was looking at it, and I was like, that's what I did. I know how to do this. Like I could do this, 1861 style.
But isn't it just like this, like sawing it?
Basically, I mean, you need a Catlin knife and a Lister knife, and then a bone saw and some chloroform. And then you gotta suture up the wound once you get it off, and that's it. I mean,
was chloroform what they used as the anesthesia?
Either chloroform or ether. And I actually knew at one point what the difference was. They would use whatever was on hand, basically. I mean, the difference is it's not like playing a doctor in a show today where you're approximating 4 years of medical school, 4 years of a residency, and all that. What they didn't know a ton. You know, before the Civil War, it was a lot of like country doctors in a way with you know, kind of old wives' tales, kind of cures for things that maybe sometimes worked, maybe sometimes didn't. But the level of carnage that they saw in the Civil War, it was actually a time of great medical breakthroughs because they had to improvise. They had never seen anything like it, and they had to try some things, some of which worked.
Learn on the go.
Yeah.
Don't do that. It
For real.
Didn't work when that guy died yesterday.
Yeah,
Let's
exactly. Didn't work on the last 10 guys. Let's try something else.
Next question.
Hi, Josh. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
Oh, I'm lovely. Thank you for asking. I saw Disgraced, by the way, which your cast was absolutely phenomenal. I actually saw it twice. But
awesome.
I'm a huge fan of liberal arts and Happy Thank You More, Please.
Awesome,
and
thanks.
I was just wondering, what was it like writing for yourself? Is it like, do you write characters that are close to you or like kind of farther away?
You know, I have a friend who's a terrific writer. She's a playwright and a screenwriter named Suzanne Heathcote, and she said oftentimes, oh no, it was another friend. Suzanne is a terrific writer, but it was another friend of mine who said sometimes when we write for ourselves, it's the hardest to do because we think of ourselves a little more passive in the world, like things happen to us rather than us doing things, which is actually not true. But it is a it is a like delusion we have in our head. And I found that as I'm writing, sometimes I have to be careful to keep the character I'm writing for myself active. I think the character is slightly more active in the first movie than he was in the second, and in a little bit less of it. I had a problem in liberal arts activating Jesse. You know, what does he want? He's not a victim. You know, things aren't just happening to him, even though he kind of feels like he is. But he transforms throughout the movie into someone who actually has some more agency and actually is putting his foot on the gas of his life a little bit more. The hardest thing for me is actually maybe not the writing, but the doing everything, which I'm a little less inclined to do. I almost lost my mind doing liberal arts. It was just I was in 95% of the movie and directing it, and there were certain days I woke up and I was so excited to direct a movie, but not super excited to be in the movie I was directing. And the few scenes that I had that I was not in, I just loved it so much, and that made me think, well, my next movie, I just want to be behind the camera and see what that's like.
Did you initially write the movie for yourself to be in it, or was it kind of like, well, if I put myself in it, I have this television show behind me, I can find financing a little bit easier?
Well, that's not
yourself?
a done deal. I mean, I had a hard time finding financing for the first movie. Less so for the second movie, just because the first movie had been well received at Sundance and all that. So it wasn't really about that. It was more that the first one I wanted to write myself a great part and also make a great movie. The second one, I just the part felt I was writing something so personal. They were both personal, but I was writing something so personal that it almost felt like it would be a time saver to play the role, because if I cast another wonderful actor, I would probably annoy him and be like, can we stop and can I tell you how I would do it? And rather, just jumping in and doing it, which there's pluses and minuses to both of those things, but the part and the tone of that part was so specific that I almost felt like it was just better for me to play it. I don't know if that was correct, but
I want to be on the set where the director's going, cut, that's not how I would do it.
That's a terrible director, by the way. Yeah, which I would have been.
I think we have time for one more question.
Yep, our last question is going to be from an online viewer. So Alexander would like to know, is there anything audiences should read or do to prepare before watching Mercy Street?
Thanks, Alexander.
Time machine back to the Civil War.
I don't think you have to do any Civil War research to get what's going on, other than knowing that there was the North and the South, and slavery was the issue at hand, and all this stuff. But I think it's not, the enjoyment of the series is not predicated on you having this crazy amount of knowledge about the Civil War. I think you can just tune in, and one of the things that's great about Mercy Street is it's great as just pure entertainment. I mean, there's nothing about this show that feels like a stodgy museum piece come to life. It really feels vital and alive and urgent, and it's funny, which you wouldn't expect.
I would also say it draws parallels to sort of current social
Yeah,
hierarchies that
I mean,
we live in now.
when we were shooting in Richmond, with the Confederate flag stuff was going on, and it was just like, wow, this stuff is still 100% with us every day. So it felt like we were making something that really had some relevance. And like Ken Burns says, you can't understand America without understanding the Civil War. But that said, even though I think it's just great entertainment, it also you will learn some stuff. You'll learn some stuff you didn't know. The whole show was vetted by experts at every turn, so it's really historically faithful to what was going on.
And as you said, it's incredibly entertaining. It's on Sunday nights on PBS, right?
At 10 o'clock.
Right after Downton
Abbey, I believe,
show
is the
called
name
Downton
of the
Abbey,
show. Yeah.
Josh, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Congratulations on the show.